Welcome to another EMA Consultancy podcast. I'm joined today by EMA Director Ian Robertson. Today, we're going to be talking about what hybrid working means for terms and conditions and allowances. In our previous podcast, we looked at the shift to hybrid working as a result of the pandemic. We wanted to move the discussion on by digging a little deeper into how housing associations should address terms and conditions and allowances. Ian, let's kick off with a recap. Hybrid working, what is it?
COVID-19 had already brought about the move to agile and flexible working. Previous to that, we'd also seen flexible working models in place. But through COVID-19, we have seen people move to flexible or agile working. Agile working is a combination of either working at home or in the office, or even working in public spaces. And we've seen examples where, not wanting to mention coffee houses, but Starbucks and Nero seem to be the favourite coffee house that people are using for meeting space. So it's a new trend, probably a continuation from the trend we've previously seen through agile working. And I expect that agile work and blended working, whatever you want to call it, will be here to stay for a long time.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, so before we go further, just outline the benefits of agile hybrid working for housing associations and their employees.
I think from a housing association's perspective, there's certainly cost savings that people can make in regard to office space. And we've seen already organisations move to closing their offices or downsize their offices to facilitate that. Secondly, there's the repurpose of the offices. I've seen some organisations start to share the facilities with other companies, so they're saving money there. And the third option is probably the motivated staff that come as a consequence, simply because people have got the opportunity to move between the office or the home environment, and that will motivate staff. From an employee's perspective, obviously there's cost savings from travelling to work. Significant savings can be made, and if you think about train costs, bus costs, and also the cost of fuel, again, significant savings can be made there. There's also the option for people to look for different jobs. We've seen organisations find that people are looking to move slightly further afield to look for a job. 40, 50 miles is not unreasonable. And you think from the point of view of an employee, they will be going into the office 2-3 days a week. So that becomes a realistic proposition for them. And again, it provides more flexibility to work from home and do other things as well. And it's also accommodating a new lifestyle for individuals. Gone are the days when you work from 9 to 5, you could be working from 12 till 8 o'clock and you can do something in the morning, or do something in the afternoon, or even work at the weekends. So provide employees with a great deal of flexibility.
Okay, and so we're at a stage where we've seen a major shift in the way of working. But has the groundwork been put in? And what I actually mean by that is about the impacts on terms and conditions. It was seen there are probably a few grey areas when it comes to terms and conditions and how these transition to this new way of working.
I think organisations are starting to grapple with what the implications are of the terms and conditions that go with the agile or blended working approach, because it certainly changes a lot of factors. I think organisations, and being fair to them, COVID-19 suddenly hit them and there was no warning what was coming down the line. So they started to grapple with how they change terms and conditions. There is help out there through the government HMRC grants that people can claim. And we also find that some organisations are giving cash sums to individuals to allow them to set up their own offices at home. Within the housing sector, this tends to be around the region of £400 to £500. But I've certainly seen examples within the private sector where that's grown to £2,000 to give them more flexibility to buy desks, PCs, and also chairs and other equipment which they need to work from home. So again, there's flexibility in there for organisations to adopt different approaches when they're looking at terms and conditions. I'm also aware of one organisation within the housing sector that is giving £10,000 grants to individuals to look at their office accommodation, how they can change the home to facilitate them to work from home. So those are some of the options that are being considered and being moved forward, certainly by the housing sector.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Now, moving the discussion on, what should housing associations be reviewing when it comes to terms and conditions?
I think there's a few things that organisations need to grapple with and decide what they're going to do. The ones that spring to mind are car allowances and how that will be applied. Many organisations have a 2,500 mile requirement before people qualify for payment. Again, that's been reviewed to see if that's still appropriate, bearing in mind that many people are not doing the same amount of travelling as they've previously done. One of the other key factors organisations need to look at is health and safety and the issues around that. Many people are working from home, and you need to think about workstation assessments and how that will be undertaken and carried out. If they're not carried out effectively and properly, that could lead to legal claims at a later stage. So that's extremely important. Another thing that's been looked at is contractual sick pay. Many organisations are reporting that less sick is actually being reported. Probably no surprise, simply because people have got more flexibility. But there can be many things that are going amiss here in regard to looking at depression and anxiety. And what are organisations doing about it? They need to think logically about how they're going to address that. They might think it's a good thing that sickness is reduced, but there might be things hidden as a consequence of that. One of the other things that need to think about is people working from home. And again, we've already mentioned making expense claims for equipment that is needed. I think there needs to be some policy in place to make sure that people are following the appropriate process to be able to claim equipment. Also, we need to think about flexi time. Is this dead or not? Again, we've worked with quite a few organisations which have gone down the blended or agile working approach, but have still got flexi time. And the reason they've still got flexi time is that people within the organisations are not trusting the managers to give them the appropriate time off for the work they have done. So there needs to be a big discussion in organisations. If you're going down the blended or agile working route, is flexi time still necessary? And probably the answer is no. But I think there's some work to be done there between the managers and the staff to be able to trust each other to ensure that time off is taken appropriately.
Okay, Ian, so some really useful tips there. So while this new way of working may look an attractive option, it's not without its fair share of hurdles. Do you think housing associations are getting it right first time, or are they actually having to take a couple of goes at it?
Again, it's not just housing associations. I think it's all companies within the UK are just getting used to what this new approach to working looks like. And we're all learning from it. And yes, mistakes are being made without a shadow of a doubt. But what I do think is that if they continue down this avenue of blended working, then they will lead to motivated staff and will improve employee retention and recruitment long term. So to not go down the blended or agile working route, I think will cause issues around the recruitment issue going forward, because people will be looking for organisations which give a flexible approach, because that's the new style of work. And I think people need to be, and certainly organisations need to be aware of that. And to not do that will have issues long term for those organisations.
Well, thanks very much, Ian. Some critical points raised in our chat for our listeners to consider if they are truly going to make hybrid working, agile working a success for their organisation staff. Thanks for listening, and look out for the next podcast.